Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Politics of the Empire, presented by theempiremedia.com. I'm your host, Dorf, joined each and every week by Adam Hernandez and Josh Hauslander. How are we doing tonight, guys?
Good.
Hello. Pretty
that
good.
Is, by the way, that is a sick beat that this show opens up to. Which one of you guys picked that out?
Me.
I like that.
You like that?
Yeah.
That's just one of those royalty-free tracks, right?
I think so, yeah. Well, it is. I don't know where I got it.
We haven't got sued yet, so we're working under that assumption?
No, we haven't. I mean, last time we ever had, any threats levied against anything was actually Major League Baseball. That was the last threat. That you better take down.
They do that for everybody, so we're not unique.
No,
there.
yeah.
We're not unique there.
You better take down that leaked logo of our All-Star game. I think it's like back in 2012 or something. Okay, I'll take it down.
Yeah. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? I'm worth nothing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like Nick Denton, though, from Deadspin, who did the Hulk Hogan thing. I think that they were going after everything. Like
they own his ass.
Like his rice cooker and shit like that. Fuck, man. Oh yeah, they like let loose. Like it was. Yeah, no joke.
Hey, that's what happens when you piss off a billionaire, Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, actually, kind of the subject of that kind of is a sort of a decent lead-in to the subject of tonight's episode.
You're welcome.
What I really unintentional. We did not plan that. So tonight's episode is going to be more about a concept of. It's a little bit old. I saw a segment on YouTube of Tucker Carlson tonight where he discusses the actions of Elliott Management Group, which is a hedge fund, and their head honcho, that being Paul Singer. He essentially got Cabela's Incorporated, so an outdoor outfitter, gun store, anything hunting, fishing, camping, etc. That you could ever want, very similar to if you're not in Cabela's land, like a Bass Pro Shops. Well, he bought a stake in Cabela's, which was privately held at the time, and forced a merger with Bass Pro Shops. Even though the company was making $2 billion a year on $4 billion in sales, 50% margin in retail, that's incredibly healthy. There was no reason to sell the company or force the merger. In that process, the town of Sidney, Nebraska, roughly 6,000 people, which over 2,000 of them worked for Cabela's directly, was entirely destroyed. And Singer was not in it for the long term. Sold his stake in Cabela's, made about $100 million even before the merger was done, cashing out $90 million richer for his hedge fund. In the meantime, ruined and destroyed the lives of roughly 2,000 people who lost their jobs when that merger went through, and destroyed the town of Sidney, Nebraska. Paul Singer is at it again. He's bought enough shares of Twitter Incorporated with the express purpose going after founder and CEO Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey, not a popular man if you're a person of the let's call it the online sphere. He's not popular with anybody. If you're on the political left, he bows to the far right and placates them and allows them to be on his platform. If you're on the let's call it activist right, he is, he gives into the leftist cry bullies too often and censors right-wing political speech. So he's nobody's friend.
I was going to say he's not as unpopular, though, as Mark Zuckerberg.
I was just going to say that as well. worth noting.
Yeah, well, it's Zuckerbot. At the same time, Mark Zuckerberg is also not. Anyway, that's beside the point.
I was going to say Jack Dorsey is human, though, too, as far as we know. I mean, I think it's pretty.
Dude, Jack Dorsey and all his public appearances, and this is entirely based on me watching one episode of the Joe Rogan Experience with him on there. He's a stoner bro that happens to run a multi-billion-dollar company.
That's what I was saying though. Like, we know he's actually like a human being, unlike Zuckerberg, who may be a robot or some type of cyborg or alien.
We're just sent directly from
Lizard
the simulation.
people.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Dorf.
Well, so the idea, so the practice of essentially buying a company to, mine all its valuable assets and then dump the remaining assets to a foreign investor thereafter, is banned in many countries. For example, in the United Kingdom, the activity that Paul Singer and his Elliott Management Group engaged in, if that were to have occurred in the United Kingdom, that would have been illegal. Paul Singer would have, either forfeited his assets or potentially gone to prison if he did those activities in the United Kingdom. Paul Singer has made a bunch of money loaning money to third world nations as well. He loans them money and then essentially uses his influence within the U.S. State Department to bully them into paying it back way ahead of terms or ruining their relationship with the United States.
He in
I don't
essence
remember
he in essence
specifically
sues
examples
them.
of this country, any specific countries, but he's not a good guy. However, you could argue, if you wanted to put on your Machiavellian hat here, Paul Singer's activity when he's about to potentially engage in Twitter is that using economic forces to throw a big right hook in the whole political spectrum. This is too late likely to influence the 2020 election. By the time the legal battle would be settled with Jack Dorsey fighting for control over Twitter Inc. and its future, the 2020 election will be over before that's settled. The battle for big tech's soul, or is this just a billionaire who runs a hedge fund trying to make a quick buck by propping up Twitter and dumping it as soon as he moves the needle a little bit? Your thoughts, guys?
Listen, Dorf, I'm with you and with the vast majority of people who know who Paul Singer is. Yeah, I think the guy's a jerk. I absolutely think he's a jerk. And yeah, he is the epitome of vulture capitalism. He is, what he's doing. Now, you can always say that the main purpose of being in business is to make money. And he does that to the nth degree. No, he's not making money for his company. No, he's not making money for, it's not like, when, Ford does well and the employees of Ford are doing well, but they still say, yeah, but the CEO got all this money and they got the bonuses. Well, yeah, the CEOs still are doing better, but the company's doing well.
Well, here's the thing.
But that's not the truth with Paul Singer at all.
Ford is there. Yeah, your example of Ford here, though, is they have a strong unionized blue-collar labor staff with revenue-sharing agreements. So when the company does well, the individual employees do well as well. In addition to that, it's
even true with non-union companies.
The CEO or the corporate board that makes all the, takes all of it. The unionized workforce, the Ford is a perfect example of that. Through revenue-sharing agreements or profit-sharing incentives, benefits too. It's not unheard. I think a couple of years ago, the Ford blue-collar staff, guys that make, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, got a $30,000 bonus.
Sure. Yeah.
That happened.
I agree. Yeah. No. And that's what I'm saying is that with a guy like Paul Singer, there isn't a company that he's benefiting. And I don't think you have to go to a union example to make that last point, even. Because that's breaking into a different idea. Sure, the unions do that, but you can say the same for even non-union companies. But with Paul Singer, there is no company. He's simply doing it to make money for himself. Now, I don't think he's a very nice guy. I think he's a jerk. I don't...
Oh, by the way, he was also the biggest owner to the RNC in the 2016 campaign cycle.
Yeah, which is why he's one of these guys that every politician's heard of, but most people in the world haven't heard of him because he's one of these guys that just buys and sells people. Buys and sells influence, buys and sells politicians. Mostly Republicans in his case. But, it goes both ways.
Okay, he's one of the guys that pulls the strings behind the scenes.
Right. Absolutely. One of the things that and listen, I'm not trying to, I know maybe I'm playing a little devil's advocate here. I'm not trying to be a Paul Singer apologist. You know, really, the guy could get hit by a truck as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. I don't think he's a nice dude. I don't think he's a good person. By the way, I love Cabela's. It's an awesome store. Really, it was an awesome store. I liked it a lot better than Bass Pro Shop. I liked it better than Gander Mountain. It was an awesome store, and yes, I know it did well, and they did well for their employees. They did well for their customers, which I care about more. And they were just, it was a kick-ass store. You know, I miss them. I was bummed when I heard that this happened, and I didn't even know who Paul Singer was at the time. Didn't know anything about the Vulture capitalism aspect of it. I was just bummed that a cool store was closing, you know? But with a guy like Paul Singer, I feel like, for instance, some of the information you sent over earlier, Dorf, was really informative. But they're making these comparisons to him to, you know, say, well, a lot of other people in his position in the past did good things for their people. Henry Ford, you know, Rockefeller.
More than Henry Ford more than doubled the prevailing wage for blue-collar work at the time.
And he mostly did that, as we all know our history. Henry Ford mostly did that so his people, the people working for him, could afford to buy the cars that they were producing. So then he could mass produce them further, do it. Now, I am a person that believes that motives don't really matter that much. If good things happen, and you are the person that did good things, or, you know, that made good things come about, I don't really care what your motives are. You know, good is good. That I'm all for that. You know, another example that wasn't on what you sent over, Rockefeller was. Bill Gates, I think, is maybe another example of this. But all these guys made a fortune first. They made a fortune first and then started doing this. We have no idea if Paul Singer, who's actually, so you could make the argument Paul Singer is new to the multi-billionaire world. We have no idea if Paul Singer isn't going to turn around and do something great with his money. You know, Bill Gates stepped on a whole bunch of people before he became the Bill Gates we know today. Henry Ford made a whole bunch of money before he became all the good things we know about Henry Ford.
Okay, that's Dorf's connection tonight. So
yeah, sorry, we kind of losing Dorf here, guys.
Dorf, you might want to repeat.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dorf.
No. Okay. I've shut everything down I can to try and save all the bandwidth I have. Anyway, this isn't, to go back to the Carlson segment, I think we'll probably end up linking it in the description or somehow attaching it to the show so you can directly access the what we're asking. Carlson's argument is this is not the capitalistic system that you were promised at school. This isn't markets working. This is predatory activity to benefit only a select few. So, I mean, you look at, here's another primary example. This isn't Paul Singer doing this, but the Greek sovereign debt crisis. Remember how Greece wanted to leave the European Union, but essentially they weren't allowed to. The economic minister at the time, his name is Yanis Varoufakis, essentially said, we can get out of this rut in a decade if we take control of our own money supply again, deflate our currency, pay all of our debts off, and then we can rejoin essentially the world market again once we get our debt under control. And that's the only way it's going to be able to happen. However, who held all that debt? It wasn't other countries. It wasn't the taxpayers of Greece. It was Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank was the largest holder of the Greek sovereign debt. They were not allowed to leave the European Union and do what was best for their own people under essentially military threat because Angela Merkel didn't want Deutsche Bank's bottom line to get hurt. Too many people have money in Deutsche Bank that if Greece all of a sudden said, too bad, not paying our debts, too bad, so sad, the the whole world economy could look entirely different the next day.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
That sort of, but Paul Singer specifically does a lot of the same behavior. You know, he flexes his muscle using influence that he essentially bought from the U.S. State Department to have similar effects. Oh, well, I'll talk to my buddies at the State Department here, and all of a sudden you won't get that loan guarantee. Or I'm going to shame your human rights abuses on a world stage here and make you look bad, so people won't invest further in your country. Pay me back with interest in advance, or else. It's done this multiple times, according to the research done by, Tucker Carlson tonight. There, I will be entirely honest at that point. There with the other countries, I have not been able to independently verify that one myself. I did not, I did not do enough research ahead of time to do that. So, but I'm not even looking at the micro scale of just activities within the United States, buying and selling companies, but when countries are beholden to private corporations, like for example Greece, like the Greece example, they couldn't retake control of their own monetary supply because they were part of the eurozone. They were on the euro because it would destroy Deutsche Bank, a private company. That is a problem, and more power to, and the perfect example of why I'm proud of the UK of finally doing it, but they're going to leave the European Union because that bullshit like that. Excuse me. But the activities within, the American system, the activities of people like Paul Singer, and believe it or not, this is how Mitt Romney made all his money too, was doing very, I don't know if he was as cutthroat and ruthless as Paul Singer's been reported to be, but this is how this sort of activity, the buy a distressed company, scrap it for parts and sell it to somebody else, that's how Mitt Romney made all his money. That's how Paul Singer has made all his money. That's how plenty of countless unnamed shadowy, hedge fund managers have made all their money. In the United States, I'm sure we're not able to, we're not going to embrace, full communism now. But if we want to make the communist argument less attractive, we have to cut down on this sort of behavior. I know, Adam, if you're going to probably say, well, cool, let's do it, bring it on. But I'm not going to put words in your mouth on that one. But at the same time, if we want to make capitalism work for more people again than it is currently, this kind of stuff has to stop. And how do we do that within the American system?
It's so funny, though, because people are, you'll sit there and have people attach these nefarious adjectives to capitalism. Vulture capitalism. Oh, my God, that sounds awful. No, you know what vulture capitalism is? It's fucking capitalism. That's how capitalism is supposed to work. It's exactly how capitalism is supposed to work. Then all of a sudden, when people want their cake, they want to be able to eat it too. And this, I'm sorry, but this is capitalism. This is exactly how capitalism is supposed to work. It is. I mean, there's no other way around it. It's just, it's funny the way that people will look at something like this, see that a system isn't working, and that it opens itself up to shit like this, and they try to make excuses for it. No, this is capitalism. This is what capitalism does. And so if people want to continue with it, then that's... What was that?
I disagree with your characterization. This is what capitalism can be, but at the same time, this isn't a binary situation here. I'm not going to say, oh, this specific sector is flawed, therefore, communism forever. I'm not willing to say that is the step we need to take here. I think that this is an activity that other countries have successfully regulated out of existence, and something we need to do here as well, because the alternative, the alternative is, one of the alternative options is a communist system where capitalism ends.
You're
and
never
that's not
going
okay with me.
You're never going to be able to do that though, because capitalism is ultimately about competition, and it's ultimately about growing what you already have, and it's not going to like I said, it's not going to end, because ultimately the people, the capitalists, they're going to have the politicians in their back pocket. So eventually what you're going to have is you're going to have these big business lobbyists sitting there, getting these politicians to start to roll back some of these regulations that they have in these businesses. And eventually you're going to get to a more full-scale, quote-unquote, vulture capitalist system here. It's in a capitalist economy, in the capitalist world that we live in, something like this is eventually unavoidable on a mass scale.
Okay, Adam, let me ask you this, though. Because I feel like I'm kind of... I'm not disagreeing with direct things that both of you are saying, but I'm disagreeing with some of the premises taken. I wasn't crazy about your analogies, Dorf. And with Adam, now why is it fair to say that this is capitalism, but it's not fair for people to say, well, socialism and communism are going to lead to Stalin. They're going to lead to eating the zoo animals in Venezuela. They're going to... I mean, isn't that the exact same argument?
I would say because there's a large mischaracterization of what communism is in a capitalist country. Because right now, of course, a capitalist country and a capitalist mindset is going to sit there and do everything they can to disparage what communism ultimately is. And that's something the United States and the capitalist world, the capitalist first world, has been extremely successful in doing, is sitting there disparaging every single aspect of communism without divulging themselves into the real problems of why a socialist country is the way that they are. Hey, why is Venezuela? Why are they in a state right now where they're not in a good place? Oh, well, it's because of socialism. Okay, well, let's dig deeper than that. Is it because maybe first world capitalist hegemony has implemented their will on these countries? Is it? I mean, and that's what's funny about all of this too is that the United States and the leaders in the United States, especially right now, will sit there and bitch and complain about the immigration problem in this country. Yet it's the United States that sits here and fucking just railroads Latin America, which includes some of these Central American companies or countries, and it causes this mass devastation from an economic level, there. So you're going to get massive amounts of people trying to escape something like that. And it's not necessarily because of socialist countries. It's because of what capitalist hegemony has done to these places. And I'm not saying that some that these socialist countries, where they're talking about Venezuela or Nicaragua or Cuba or anything like that, have been perfect. But I think people are kidding themselves if they go and they say that, oh, capitalism and imperialism had nothing to do with the state of these countries.
That's fine, but they're definitely not perfect. They're not even good.
Which is completely not untrue.
Well, at the same time, Adam, to your point, did the system of command economics in open a country like Venezuela up to economic manipulation, where a bigger player or bigger fish in this case, that being the United States or even OPEC for a large, did that open them up to being vulnerable to where, when things went sour in the one industry that they essentially specialized in and which the government had all control over, that all of a sudden, they have no recourse and no way out when things change, when the status quo changed, and all of a sudden oil wasn't $140 a barrel anymore. When oil was $140 a barrel and you and I were paying over $4 a gallon in the mid 2000s, early 2000s for gasoline, Venezuela was sitting pretty.
Yeah, but that just goes to prove the point that imperialism and capitalism. I mean, there's no limit to what.
Or was that a bad economic decision? Where in a command economy,
no, that's
that's
that's imperialism. You know, sitting there trying to sniff out their next victim. That's what that is. That's capitalism continuing.
Everything is a power game.
That's
man.
capitalism.
Can
that's capitalism. That's capitalism continuing to try to grow by consuming other countries and other resources.
But can't you argue that the power games that sort of played at that sort of level are just, you know, one of the laws of nature?
Hey,
you know, bigger fish eat smaller fish.
No, if you want to get into that argument,
leaves you in a vulnerable state.
If you want to get into the argument, Dorf, if you want to get into the argument that all of a sudden, well, capitalism is human nature, that's
I'm not
so
saying it's human nature.
false.
I'm saying it's nature.
No, you're talking out of your ass right now. And you know what? Like I said, that's capitalism for you, though. I mean, eventually what you're going to be moving to is a destitute and just, you know, fucked up world that's deprived of all of its natural resources. And look, if that's,
listen,
like
guys,
I said, that's what capitalism is.
If I can jump in here in the middle, kind of this debate of capitalism good, socialism.
Look,
good.
Josh, one thing. I mean, that's why I was leery of this topic, just because I knew that this is what it was going to get into.
Yeah.
But
I want to try and get it back away from that.
That's why, that's what I'm trying to do, is redirect it away from that, because that's not. Listen, I'm not prepared.
I didn't want it to go there either. Sorry.
I'm not prepared to blame capitalism or blame socialism, for that matter, on the fact that Paul Singer is a jerk. Okay, Paul Singer is not a good guy. He is a guy who is manipulating the system he's in to make himself more powerful. To me, you put a guy like Paul Singer in a socialist system, in a communist system, and he's a Joseph Stalin type. You put him in a capitalistic system, he's a Paul Singer type. You put these guys, you know, you have bad actors. This is a bad actor. This is a guy that sucks. Now, what I can only hope for is that if Paul Singer is jumping in and loaning money to countries and then calling the debt and suing them and using his clout to put them into worse positions and make money on it quicker, and if he's jumping into private corporations and taking over the stock option and making them sell so they can turn a profit for him like he did with Cabela's, all I can do is hope that people get wise to this guy. That's all you can do. I mean, I think the guy's a jerk. I think he's a bad actor. I think he's a bad person.
In a publicly traded company like Twitter, they can't say no to his money. Cabela's could have.
But they can make sure that people can make sure that Paul Singer doesn't get enough control of it.
Yeah,
you're
absolutely right. But why want to protect the American system in the way it is at least it's an option to not have to engage. And when you put all your eggs in a command economy basket, and option A goes wrong, there is very often not option B. There is no way to, whoops, that company made a mistake, that industry made a mistake, it's time for it to die, because everybody will go with it. And you know, honestly, man, this is something I've always struggled, you know, to see past. Is all I can see is in a communistic future, it's going to manage. It's just managing stagnation. I don't understand how when you remove the profit incentive, that things will continue to grow in a fashion like this, like the history
because
of
you
man.
don't understand communism, Dorf.
I understand.
You don't understand it. You don't understand it.
Well, that's all right.
Okay, Adam.
A Gallup poll in 2013 revealed that 13% of workers were unmotivated, or 13% of workers were actually motivated by their jobs in a monetary incentive based
You are correct.
obviously
But
world.
here's the ultimate truth in life. It's the Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 rule. Even if it's probably even smaller than that, only a small elite percentage of people are ultimately economically productive. And when you remove their incentive to be economically productive, when they ultimately, outside of just subsistence, the whole, the whole system could fall apart, and all of a sudden you're going to have a massive correction, lossing a huge amount of loss of human life, and misery and suffering along the way. And when I'm worried about that when you remove that incentive, and that's just something I can't square, because you know what, if we could square that, I'd be a lot more open to some more centralized decision making.
So essentially what you're saying is if
risky.
there's no monetary incentive, you're perfectly fine with starving and dying.
It's not even monetary incentive. Just think you can do this fun bucks, coupons, clout, whatever. But when that goes away, I just don't know. I don't know how we square that circle.
Again, look into communism and look at the other incentive structures that are out there. That's all I'm going to say is look at it.
Well, here's okay.
Okay, let's just leave
it at that. Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Okay, Dorf, can I chime in on some of the analogies you made early on before we kind of went off on this tangent? I feel like there are very much different thoughts being put out there, and I'm not crazy about this analogy to what Paul Singer did to Cabela's and what the EU did to Greece. Just basically with the idea that, listen, I can't stand the European Union. I wish it didn't exist. Do I blame Greece for wanting to get out of the European Union, for trying to leave the bad deal that they made? Well, yeah, I can see why they want to, but truth be told, and you're talking about Greece, exercising their sovereignty or breaking away from this. Greece doesn't have any sovereignty anymore. Greece is part of the EU. I mean, sorry for Greece that they made a bad deal, but that's just a deal that they made. And I'm not trying to stick up for Germany or Deutsche Bank, but they're in this. That would be no different than if Alabama, loaned billions of dollars from the federal government, and then Alabama said, no, we're seceding from the Union. We'd say, the hell you are, pay us back first. Anyone would say that. That's not capitalism. That's not socialism. That's not even totalitarianism. That's just, you're not going anywhere till you finish the deal we made. So we're free and clear. The UK wasn't in that position. They never put themselves in so deep into the EU that they couldn't say, screw you guys, we're out. We're gone. It's what Greece did is very comparable to what Scotland did. Because they didn't join the
monetary system. They kept their own money.
They did, and that's why they were smart. I mean, it's more similar to compare it to when Scotland wanted to leave. Scotland wanted to leave the UK and say, no, we'll go join the EU. The EU said, we never said we wanted you.
One Super Tuesday update.
Sure.
Super Tuesday update. Michael Bloomberg won this American Samoa caucus.
Oh, that's neat.
So he's got. Is that
actually worth delegates at all?
Yes.
Or delegate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Puerto Rico, American Samoa, all these, they actually do get to vote in the conventions. They do have primaries, and they do get delegates for both Republicans and Democrats.
Sorry, go ahead.
They actually, this is true in Puerto Rico. I'm not positive it's true in the American Samoa. They vote for president on election day, and their votes count towards the popular vote, but they have no electoral votes because they're not states. So it's kind of a silly thing that another reason they should become states, but that's neither here nor there. I just with this vulture capitalism thing, I feel like, yes, the people who are anti-capitalism try to jump on this. They try to be critical of it. I feel like the people who are pro-capitalism like to say, well, that's not capitalism, it's vulture capitalism. That's not capitalism, it's crony capitalism. And to be fair, the socialists and communists do that too, right? I mean, I'm just trying to find common ground here. You know, when people point out that, you know, socialism has failed everywhere, they do it. The socialists and the communists say, no, they were doing it wrong. Right? I mean, that's something that's, I think, fair to say that.
I don't think it is, but I don't want to get into that discussion right now. Well, the show's almost over, so.
Okay, well, all I'm saying is, I respect people's ability to be a socialist or a communist, and I respect them being able to say that we're not going to let the failures of the USSR or China or Vietnam or North Korea, we're not going to let that poison the name of communism or socialism, because there is a legitimate ideology here that we're trying to push, and you don't understand it properly. But if the socialists and the communists get to make that point, the capitalists do too. And they get to say, listen, this isn't capitalism. This isn't what capitalism is supposed to be. Capitalism isn't supposed to be an international thing where you can take advantage of the non-capitalist countries or jump in, and that, you know, that's not capitalism. That's vulture capitalism. That's crony capitalism.
I mean, I would ask what, I mean, in that sense, I would ask, what is capitalism then?
Capitalism, and again, I'm not, this was going to come to my point here in a second. I'm not trying to be pro-capitalism here or pro-socialism or anti either one either. I'm trying to speak in the abstract. But if it was true capitalism, then his business would ultimately fail when business was bad. You wouldn't make money by closing businesses. You wouldn't make money by putting people out of business. You would make money by starting businesses. You would make money by having your workers make money, and then you make more money.
I mean, this probably would have been better prefaced by saying, okay, what is capitalism? Having a, you know, establishing what capitalism is. Because
Perhaps.
I mean, because no offense, Josh, I mean, that's you're still not pointing out to what capitalism actually is.
Okay, my point being, I'm not here to be the guy who defines capitalism or to be the guy who defines socialism. That's not what I'm here for. But what I am here to say is that there are bad people. There are bad people, and that just because there are bad people within that doesn't, just because Paul Singer...
What you're trying to say is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yes, just because Paul Singer is a jerk doesn't mean capitalism is a flawed system. Just because Joseph Stalin was a jerk doesn't mean that communism is a failed system. Just because the founding fathers couldn't maintain the liberty that they were trying to push so hard for, doesn't mean that libertarianism is a failed system. Doesn't mean that federalism is a failed system. This is my point. These are examples of when these systems have failed the people. I'm not trying to say capitalism is great.
I'm not
even saying it's good. I just think I personally like capitalism because it lends itself to liberty. Because it's, you know, I don't like government regulation because I feel like government regulation destroys it. Now, in the Tucker Carlson thing, which I guess we could link to probably at some point, in the Tucker Carlson thing, they're talking about how, you know, old school capitalists didn't do this. Old school capitalists managed to still make a fortune, but do great things for society. It wasn't through less regulation of capitalism that capitalism started to get bad. It was through more regulation of capitalism that capitalism started to get bad. Which is why I don't necessarily jump on the train with the UK and say, yeah, ban it. Ban it. I'm not prepared to say that I think what Paul Singer's doing should be illegal. I think it's wrong. And I want people to start saying, I'm not going to spend money at the places Paul Singer owns. I'm hoping that the countries of the world will wise up and say, okay, none of us are going to borrow money from Paul Singer anymore, right? You know, I'm hoping that guys on boards of companies in the U.S. say, we're not going to let Paul Singer jump in here and take control of this. Because I'm not pretending to be, I'm not a financial wizard by any means. This is out of my wheelhouse. I'm not denying that. But when I'm hearing about Paul Singer taking over Cabela's, I'm hearing that he bought 11% of the stock. How the hell do you control everything when you own 11% of the stock? Somebody must have been on his side. I'm thinking somewhere around 40% to give him the 51. I don't know what else he did behind the scenes to win that, but you don't control something when you control 11% of it. So somebody was on board with this guy. I think, unless it can be explained to me in some other way. Maybe I'm missing a huge portion of this. But last
some
I
of the
checked,
portion that Carlson alluded to in that specific example was Paul Singer is notorious for this. He buys that 10, 11, 12, 13% of companies, and that's enough to get a seat on a board if you're publicly traded. That's more than enough to have huge influence on a board, and you essentially can force in or out and elect your own chairperson with that big of it. Because the company is split up infinite, so many ways that can buy, having 11%, you might be the largest individual shareholder. I think Jack Dorsey still owns way more than Paul Singer, but guess what? Paul Singer's got deep pockets and is known to sue people for not acting in his ways. And Twitter is is not a growing business at this point. It's pretty much only popped up by its share price. Its user base isn't growing. Its revenue isn't growing. If they get in a protracted legal fight, the company can't afford it. The other investors in Twitter are going to have no choice but to, in order to protect their investment, decide with Paul Singer and force Jack Dorsey out.
Or they can
this
throw
may not
some
be
balls.
for the potential political motivations, because Paul Singer is a huge right-wing causes in the RNC. This could just be latest victim.
Well, and
Twitter's fine. Twitter is financially stable.
So is Cabela's.
They will be around, but they're vulnerable. The platform isn't growing. It's slowly turning into just a bunch of professional journalist types yelling at each other and meme accounts. That's all it really is now. Just like Facebook went from the hip cool thing to be to your grandma's chain email message on a public board. It may have peaked already, but that doesn't mean Paul Singer can't come in, slash some stuff, offshore some other stuff, much like he did exactly with, he wasn't the only hedge fund that was involved in the Delphi bankruptcy case. There was another thing. Tucker also was part of General Motors.
Your connection's killing me, Dorf.
Sorry. I'll troubleshoot that and try and figure it out for tomorrow. But anyway, by the time Delphi, when they got in trouble, had 39 U.S.-based plants, all union. By the time he and Singer and Elliott Management and all the other venture capitalist firms were done with it, there was 4 left in the United States. The rest of them were moved overseas, and the number of the lines that the business produced didn't change. So foreign investors got rich. U.S., the Elliott Management and the other hedge fund groups made their money back in spades. And the only people who lost was the guys who used to work for that company that used to make those parts. And, yeah, that sucks. It's wrong. It's terribly immoral in my mind, and especially because Delphi to that point was fine. It could have survived bankruptcy on its own and continued to operate in very similar ways. That just wasn't good enough for some people. And unfortunately, now you're seeing the vulnerability, especially with the coronavirus in China, when we have so many manufacturing eggs in the Chinese basket. Not only what the effect is on the stock market and how volatile that's made that in the last 2 weeks, but at the same time, guys, all of our antibiotics, all of our antiviral medicines are made in China. Guess who will cease production and stop shipping shit to the rest of the world? And has done that. China. We did this, and we're okay with it. Everybody was okay with it because of the almighty dollar. That doesn't mean I'm going to go, yay, communism here, but at the same time, this sort of activity, which, this is just, look at strategic resources. Antibiotics are a strategic resource. That is the kind of stuff that should be regulated, similar to weapons and defense materials under ITAR. We should have, requirements that sort of strategic resources are made at home. So we don't have to, beg and plead and bow to Red China here. We don't have to beg and plead into the same idea that why does Germany get 60% of its energy from Russia? Why is I'm not a German here, but why are we okay with that? They did it because of they could have sourced all their energy needs within their own borders. They did it forever, but it was okay because Deutsche Bank made fucking money.
Listen,
but to Josh, your point earlier on this, we've been okay with this because, quite frankly, the voting population of this country is ignorant of this stuff. And now, finally, this sort of activity outside of, Timmy's, Uncle Timmy's factory closed. He's got to go find a new job. Or, man, I'm out of work now. My factory just got outsourced. I'll go find another job. It'll suck for a while. But, now it's kind of hits the home. Oh, shit, we may not be able to treat people if this goes pandemic within the United States because we lack the strategic resources because we don't make anything here anymore. And we've been okay with that for a long time. And guess what? By the time you can correct that and resource that stuff within the United States, it may be too late. There may be tens of thousands dead before that can happen. I have no doubt we have the skill to get it done. I have no doubt we have the ability to make that at a competitive price and make it work. But holy fuck, that sort of stuff takes 18 months. We don't have 18 months. If this goes the way it, at least is trending, and specifically in Italy, in China right now.
Listen, guys, all I have to say about this is I feel like I'm trying to make the points of ideologies for which I'm not an ideologue. So a true capitalist would want the production to be right here in the U.S. Instead of having to buy stuff from China, we would want to manufacture it here. A true socialist would also want that. I mean, not done in the exact same manner.
Wait, what do I want?
You would want the country to be self-sufficient and to have those things controlled. We wouldn't want to have to be beholden to China.
Hey, now I'm an anarchist. I don't want any.
Well, Adam, I was going to bring that up. I know you fancy yourself.
That leaves you incredibly vulnerable. That's all I'm.
No, and you fancy yourself an anarcho-communist.
Wait, did you say I'm extremely vulnerable?
No, that sort of system leaves you extremely vulnerable to these type of activities.
The anarchist system.
Events.
No, the anarchist system. Is that what you're saying, Dorf?
No, he's saying the system we have currently.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, what I'm saying is...
I'm not saying anarchism would be better at it, but the way we've done things means this is incredibly vulnerable.
I mean, Adam, I know you fancy yourself an anarcho-communist, a legitimate ideology. An anarcho-capitalist would certainly be opposed to this type of capitalism. Would certainly be opposed to this kind of vulture capitalism. A capitalist, you don't have to be a capitalist or a socialist to want to have the production in your own country. To want to have that produced. To me, if anything, this is something that for things like this we should be claiming elites or globalists. That is the problem here, is the idea that we'd be beholden to China, that we're beholden to some billionaire like Paul Singer who can, play with people's minds. In a capitalist system, if it was done right, and I'm doing air quotes here, done right, then we could always stop a guy like this by simply not buying his products anymore. But he's not selling a product. He's jumping in and taking control of things. I mean, this is like to me this is a nation that says we're going to go crazy taking over other countries and exploiting their resources, and then when you say, no, that's bad, you say, oh, you're anti-military. Like, no, I'm not anti-military. I'm anti-military doing that. This is like a guy who's carjacking everybody out on Telegraph here in Detroit, and You say you don't want him to do that. You say, wait, I thought you were pro-gun. I thought you were pro-Second Amendment. I am pro-Second Amendment. I'm not pro-carjacking. You know, that's... I feel like this is what's happening here. I feel like we're trying to assign... we're trying to assign bad actors and bad deeds being done. We're trying to assign them to an ideology. And the ideology is bad. The ideology is badness. Paul Singer's ideology isn't capitalism. Paul Singer's ideology is greed. I know Adam thinks that.
But if you ask me, that's what capitalism is.
But and that's fine. That's fine, Adam. But I don't think everybody that starts a small business is greedy necessarily. I don't buy that. You might. That's okay. That's all right.
I mean, the perfect example of what you could even argue.
We do have to start wrapping up, though, you guys.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we have a guest on the next
thing. This is the opposite, an opposite example of vulture capitalism. There's a payment processor. I forget the exact name of it. You got publicity again here in the last couple days that his starting salary for any one of his employees is $70,000 a year. That is well above the national average. He doesn't, if they don't have $70,000 to create a new position, they don't create it. And just the runaway success that his companies had. I mean, he's not PayPal by any means, but the runaway success that he's had in employee retention, performance, profitability, et cetera, is something to be admired. I mean, you could also look at, this is an extreme example. It's a publicly traded company, Costco. They bucked the trend here. Their CEO, you always see the multiplier. Average CEO makes 60 times or whatever their entry level employee. Well, for a CEO of a company as large as Costco, the dude makes $200,000 a year. That's on CEO's level. That's nothing, because he wants to pay above market wages for his frontline employees, and that's one way that the company's able to achieve that. So until you see people willing to do that, you're always going to struggle with the Paul Singers of the world, because you know what? It's one of those. If you've read Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, it's just one of those vulnerabilities that, is easily exploited. And so if you don't do it, somebody else will. So anything else we want to say here, guys, or we want to wrap it up on that?
No, I think we're good. I think we covered a lot of ground here.
Okay. Well, that is going to be it for this episode. All right. That's going to be it for this episode of Politics of the Empire, presented by theempiremedia.com. Our next show is in 2 weeks, that being on the 17th. 7:30. We're going to move it back to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We've been starting at 7 here. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, live right wherever you're watching us now, or on the replay at anywhere you get your podcast, that being YouTube or anywhere else, including YouTube. So for Josh, Adam, I'm Dorf. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks.